Welcome to the Daily News Roundup. It's Friday, February 8th, 2025, and we've got a lot to cover today, from elections to lawsuits, even a stranded astronaut.
Wow, sounds like a busy news day.
Let's jump right in with Ecuador. They're heading to the polls this weekend to elect a new president, and security is top of mind for voters.
Yeah, the country's been dealing with a surge in violence, mostly because of drug gangs trying to control those cocaine trafficking routes.
A tough spot for voters, for sure.
Absolutely. You got the current president, Noboa, who's really taken a hard line.
Yeah, more military presence, new prisons.
But that approach, some people are worried about human rights.
His challenger, Luisa Gonzalez, she's pushing for better human rights training for security forces, but also says she'll be tough on crime.
Voters are definitely caught in a difficult position.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Jorge. His father was killed by a gang in Guayaquil.
Tragic.
He backs Noboa's tough stance. Then you have Luis, his teenage sons. They were allegedly killed by the military. He's angry, of course, and doesn't trust the government. It really highlights the impossible choice Ecuadorians are facing.
Let's move on to the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. They're disconnecting from that Russian-controlled power grid.
Big step toward energy independence.
Huge, especially 3 decades after they left the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
It's like cutting that final cord.
Powerful symbol.
But risky, too, right? I mean, Russia doesn't have the best track record with, countries that were once part of the Soviet Union.
You're not wrong there. They've got a 2-day period where these countries are basically on their own, relying on their own power generation before they can connect to the European grid through Poland. It's definitely a vulnerable time.
Especially with, those past cable sabotage incidents in the Baltic Sea and all the cybersecurity threats out there. Okay, let's shift gears to the U.S., where a judge has at least temporarily stopped President Trump's plan to put over 2,000 USAID workers on paid leave.
He wants to dismantle the agency.
Exactly. But this judge has issued a temporary restraining order.
It's a small victory, the judge said. Forcing these workers to go on leave would cause them irreparable harm, while the government, they wouldn't really be harmed by a delay.
Makes sense, but this isn't over for USAID, is it?
Not even close. The Trump administration is still planning to drastically cut USAID's workforce.
We're talking potentially going from around 10,000 employees down to just a few hundred worldwide. Huge cuts.
And this is where Elon Musk and his Doge come in.
They're pushing for these cuts, right? A big focus on government efficiency.
Exactly. But former USAID chiefs, members of Congress, they're warning about the impact on global aid, humanitarian efforts.
Scary to think about.
Some are even saying these cuts, they could cost lives.
And project a negative image of the U.S. globally.
Definitely clashes with that America First rhetoric we hear so much.
Speaking of Trump, he's actually backtracked on those tariffs he slapped on small packages coming from China. Remember those?
He wanted to target those trade deficits, protect American businesses.
Well, it backfired, didn't it?
A bit. Things got pretty chaotic. The Postal Service even had to stop accepting packages from China for a while because they couldn't handle the tariff collection.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it seems like another example of the Trump administration making quick policy changes that lead to, well, unintended consequences. Then they have to scramble to fix things.
Let's talk about U.S. Steel. Japan's Nippon Steel is going to invest heavily in the company, but they're dropping their bid to buy it outright. This after the Biden administration blocked the takeover, national security concerns.
Interesting turn of events, isn't it? Trump, who initially didn't want the merger, he's now stepping in to, mediate this new deal.
So now he's supporting foreign investment in a key American company after, criticizing that kind of thing in the past.
And don't forget the whole issue of rare earth minerals. U.S. Steel controls those, which adds a whole other layer of complexity to this.
Speaking of complicated, TikTok is back in the news. They're facing a lawsuit from parents in the UK, 4 teenagers who died after doing that blackout challenge circulating on the app.
Absolutely tragic.
The lawsuit claims TikTok's algorithm is designed to push addictive content, and that this can have, obviously devastating consequences.
And this is all happening while TikTok is already under scrutiny for safety and potential national security risks. Its future in the U.S. is still a big question mark.
Now, for something a little lighter but still intense, NASA astronaut Sunita Williams is stuck on the International Space Station. Technical issues.
9-month delay in her return.
Can you imagine?
But she's staying positive, embracing this chance to share what it's like to live in space, showing how adaptable you have to be up there.
Incredible. It's a good reminder that even when things go wrong, your perspective can make all the difference.
And we're back with the Daily News Roundup, and the ICC, the International Criminal Court, has been making headlines lately. This week, Trump imposed sanctions on ICC staff.
Yeah, a lot of countries, even some of our allies, are not happy about that. They see the ICC as really important for international justice.
Right. This goes back to last year when the ICC issued those arrest warrants for, well, some pretty high-profile people. Israeli leaders, Hamas commander.
Alleged war crimes in Gaza.
Exactly. The U.S. and Israel have never really liked the ICC. They say it's biased against them.
But a lot of countries think it's crucial to hold individuals accountable for war crimes, no matter who they are.
It's a big debate about international law and, what justice really means in such a complicated world.
And of course, all this is happening with the war in Gaza still raging.
Definitely adds to the tension. Okay, switching gears completely, Elon Musk is facing some backlash for rehiring a Doge employee who had to resign because of, well, racist stuff he posted online.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Musk is saying everyone deserves a second chance, but some people are saying it sends the wrong message.
Especially with Doge being so involved in government now.
It makes you think about, online actions having real-world consequences.
For sure. Now, in Latin America, Venezuela is calling the U.S. seizure of one of their government planes a brazen theft.
This happened in the Dominican Republic.
Right, and the U.S. says they did it because of sanctions violations and money laundering stuff.
This is just the latest issue between the U.S. and Venezuela.
The U.S. has imposed all those sanctions on Venezuela under Maduro. Corruption, human rights abuses. Venezuela says it's all just an excuse to meddle in their affairs.
Things are definitely heating up. Speaking of tense relations, Canada's Prime Minister, Trudeau, seems worried that Trump might actually be serious about annexing Canada.
I know it sounds crazy, but Trump has said it before that Canada should just become part of the U.S.
Most Canadians aren't thrilled about that idea.
It started with those tariff threats, and a lot of people thought Trump was just bluffing, but Trudeau isn't so sure.
Wild. Okay, some really heartbreaking news now. UNICEF is reporting a huge surge in sexual violence against children in Haiti.
They're saying it's a 1,000% increase since 2023, mainly because of all the gang violence there.
Awful.
Children are literally caught in the middle of this violence. It's a terrible situation.
UNICEF is pleading for more funding to help. But with all these aid cuts, it's hard to say where that money will come from.
A tough situation for sure. In Sweden, they're mourning the victims of the country's worst mass shooting.
7 women, 3 men, all killed at an adult education center.
The gunman, he was 35, he killed himself after the attack.
Just devastating. Sweden's talking about stricter gun laws now, trying to figure out how to prevent something like this from happening again.
In Alaska, sad news about that missing plane. They've found the wreckage.
3 confirmed dead. They think 7 more bodies are inside.
It was a Cessna Caravan, 9 passengers and the pilot. They disappeared on Thursday.
Terrible weather up there made the search really difficult.
Alaska can be unforgiving. Back in the U.S., rapper Sean Diddy Combs is facing another sexual assault allegation.
This time a man says Combs drugged and raped him back in 2012 in a New York nightclub.
The man was 17 at the time.
Combs is already dealing with a lot of other lawsuits and charges.
Sex trafficking, racketeering.
He denies all the allegations.
This whole thing has really put a spotlight on the issue of power and abuse in the entertainment industry.
Okay, last story for this segment. We talked about that Oscar-nominated documentary No Other Land earlier.
The one about the fight over Mesa Feriata in the West Bank.
Right. The director, he's Palestinian, and he says film can be a way to make a difference, even in a conflict like this one.
Always hope, even in the toughest situations.
It's powerful stuff, and, it's a reminder that even when things seem really bleak, there's always someone trying to make things better, even in a conflict like this.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our daily news roundup for Friday, February 8th, 2025. We covered a lot of ground today.
We did. Elections, international tensions, lawsuits, even a stranded astronaut.
But we also saw examples of resilience, the power of art, and the fight for a better world.
That's the news for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with more news and analysis.
Until then, stay informed and stay engaged.